My name's Martin. I'm a developer. I've been working in the AR space for many years. What we've found over and over again in trying to create lots of AR experiences and share them and deploy them is that one of the main problems in AR today that we're facing today, aside from just tech that's evolving over time, is that it's just really hard to make content. And there's a bunch of reasons that it's hard to make content. Going from the fact that assets are difficult to create to deploying them in real-world locations is difficult, hosting content is difficult, discovery of that content is difficult. So that's kind of the problem that my team at Trace set out to go solve. So I'll just give you all a quick run through. So I think we could talk a little bit about what is the opportunity of augmented reality, like why do any of this stuff? And for us, the good question is, how can we empower really like any location, any object on Earth that is physical, could have a digital version of itself or digital context, extra information about it, and how can we make that really accessible to people who come and see it, and also how can we make it more practical for people who have locations or products or objects that matter to them. How can we empower them to actually add this kind of content and share it with everybody else? So like I said, right today the landscape is it's quite difficult. So again, this is the problem that we're attempting to solve with Trace. What do I mean by AR? And just real quick, I'm gonna breeze through just a few slides. What I want to do today is just get really hands-on and not too much like slideshow. So I'm just gonna breeze through a couple of things, and then I'm gonna keep it pretty high level. If we want to get into any details or technical stuff or design questions and stuff, I think we'll keep that more free form afterwards. But that being said, so AR. It's become a little bit of an umbrella term. Like you can mean all sorts of things by augmented reality. It may cover a range of ideas or technologies. When I say AR, I mean some experience where you have virtual elements and you have physical elements, and they begin to occupy the same space. That could be the same virtual space, it could be the same real space, but the blending of these two ideas and coming together, that's where it starts to become quite interesting, I think. And so what I don't mean is necessarily is just like a 2D overlay, right? A lot of times people will say AR and it's got, some information about what you're looking at, but it's like a piece of text, which is, sure, that's AR, it's just not what I'm talking about today. And then there's a question of how do you consume, how do you view it? So this could be on a phone, it could be on a pair of XR glasses or other headsets, or it could be on some other, something else like a TV or a projector. If you're walking by a space and you have a camera facing the audience and the processing is happening and then displayed on a projector, that's an awesome way to come and interact with space, because you don't need to go download anything, you don't need to take your phone out, and you can all sort of experience something together. So these are all like totally valid ways of talking about AR, I think. And I brought a few toys along as well. We have a bunch of iPhones, iPads. I have these XR AR glasses from Lenovo, so we can play with some of this stuff a little bit later. So again, what I want to focus on today is kind of like the content side. So talking about what kinds of things can we bring into this landscape of augmented reality. So one of the really interesting ways, I think, to start to engage people is through avatars. So an avatar, basically here I'm talking about some virtual representation or embodiment of yourself or a character. Could be anything really, but normally it's a representation of yourself. It could look like you, it could look like something else. And it allows you to represent yourself in a digital context. It could be an AR or in something else. The reason I like to talk about avatars first is because it's kind of like a really direct way to think about projecting yourself into an augmented space. You don't have to think about creating content or 3D modeling or any of these other sort of complex content creation tasks. It's really more of a direct question of how do you want to express yourself in a digital world. So this is like a really direct way, and that's kind of what one of our focuses that allow us to make content creation really accessible. So I'm going to point out there's infinite ways to create an avatar. I'm pointing out two sort of like two avatar creators that I like. One is Ready Player Me, and this is a website that lets you create a stylized avatar of yourself. It could be from a single photo, or you can click through and create one of yourself. This is one of mine down here. And then the other one that I'm going to point out is called Avaturn. This is a newer entry into this like world of avatar creation systems and management systems. But I think this one's really promising. It gives you more sort of photoreal avatars. And that's my one of my avatars on the right here. I couldn't help it from not making like a really angry face. I didn't want it to be so angry, but that's what it is. So I can come back to this slide later, but I think one of the things to do today is to play around with some of these ideas, create some avatars of ourselves. And so Ready Player Me, we have integration today in Trace, meaning if you create an avatar in Ready Player Me, we can immediately start using it in AR using Trace, which I can show you a little bit later. And Avaturn is not yet directly supported, but we'll do it later. So it's worth playing around with if you want to sort of compare and contrast and see what you like. Other kinds of content that you can pull into augmented reality. So 3D models. This is a virtual representation of an object in 3 dimensions that you can view from any angle. Sorry if this is a repeat of stuff that you are already aware of, but I want to make sure we all are thinking about this in the same way. Once we start talking about 3D models, we can start talking about like content creation that's more expert kind of level, right? Typically, if you're creating a 3D model, you have some experience in a tool like Blender, which is awesome. I recommend checking it out if you want to get into doing that stuff, but it's very hard. I'm terrible at it, so probably some of you are maybe much better. So that's one way, is to sort of directly model things yourself using some of these 3D modeling tools. Another one is to scan a physical object. And there are lots of tools, and the tool sets are growing like every week about how you can scan a quality model of a real object. So if I wanted to represent my water bottle or something, right? It's a silly example, but I could go ahead and I could use my phone or some cameras, basically snap a bunch of photos from many angles, and then use some software to transform those photos into a single 3D model that can then be viewed from any angle. And finally, this is probably the easiest solution if you're looking for 3D models to use, is to look at a database of models that have already been created. So Sketchfab is probably one of the biggest ones today, where people upload lots of their models. Some of them are free. Some of them they want to charge you for their art. So that's a really interesting thing to do to start looking. If you have ideas for projects that you want to do, you don't have to start from scratch. You can look at what's been created and use those either as final assets or just as placeholders that you can always adjust later. And finally, the 2D media. You don't necessarily think about it as much in AR, but you can place things like photos and videos within a 3D environment. You can think about that sort of like putting a virtual screen, right? So it's in a real space. So it's free from the bounds that a normal 2D object would be constrained in, right? It doesn't have to be placed on something or against a wall or at a particular angle or at a particular size. Totally arbitrary. However, it's going to appear in 2 dimensions. It's not going to probably be as dynamic as a 3D object would. You're not going to be able to view it from any angle the way that you would a 3D object. So it's a little bit, in general, I think less compelling, but it's a cool thing to like mix in if you have other interesting content. It's cool to maybe add a little video for context or add a little pop-up icon of an artist or whatever it is. All right, so I said I was going to be short. I think that's going to be. I'm going to stop the slideshow basically here. I'll show maybe a couple of demos while we're all looking at the screen. But what I also have here, if you have an iPhone, so this is we have a creator beta. So I'll give you a quick update about the state of where we're at. We have public viewer apps, meaning anybody can come and see trace content on all kinds of devices, including on iOS, on Android, and on XR headsets. In order to create that content, you would need to use our creator app, which is in beta, and we have SETI granted access here. We have several iPhones and iPads that I think might already have it pre-installed, otherwise we'll go ahead and set those up. But this will basically take you to Test Flight, which is Apple's way of distributing some of these beta apps. So I can pull this back up later. I'll show maybe a couple of videos on some projects that we've done recently. So let's see. Just to give you an idea of like kinds of content and how it might look in practice. So this one we just did last week at it's a Hip Hop 50th Anniversary Summit in New York. So we worked with an organization there to deploy some experiences. So here's somebody using the app. They're opening it up. They've got this floor marker. They get welcome to the space, and they're able to walk around. And there's a bunch of like real content. There's like real DJs and real artists and stuff there, and they're kind of added some memorials and some historical timelines and a bunch of interesting assets that they curated. And speaking of, let's see, avatars. What do I have here? This was an avatar recording by this guy Ralph, who did a show called Video Music Box. So he was able to basically record himself using the app and place it there, so anybody who came in would see that content, but they would also be able to interact with representations of people who are involved in the actual show. Well, I think I have a video somewhere that I'll show you maybe later of the actual recording process, because that's a little bit interesting too. But essentially, the idea is to make it as similar for recording yourself in 3D as you might be used to recording like a selfie video in 2D. In other words, you can pick up your phone, click record, look at the camera, and then walk around and then show off a space and speak to the camera as if you're speaking to somebody who's physically there in front of you, who will then later be able to come in and experience it on demand. Here's another one we did last year for like a kind of museum / shopping mall in Hong Kong called K11. So basically you come in, you're presented with the branded space. And they do like thousands and thousands of tours every year. So they had some of their docents come in and record some welcome messages and some tours about some of their exhibitions and some of their retail. And here's one that somebody posted recently. This group is doing real estate tours. So you can see she just walked through a virtual table. So they're using it for staging. So you can have an empty house and then go in and then see what it might look like with different kinds of furniture. Here's another virtual one that she sort of walks through. And then they also have tours from these agents who are able to show you around the house. And this is some 2D content here, for example, right? They have this card that shows you more information about the house, as well as some 3D models that they placed here and some avatars. So hopefully this gets you thinking a little bit about what might be possible, what you might be interested in creating in spaces that matter to you or objects that matter to you, and how you might think about presenting them. If you haven't already, either maybe grab one of the devices sitting around, one of the iPads or iPhones, or you're welcome to use your own device by scanning that code if you like. And I'm going to see if I can connect my phone and do a little live demo as well. All right, so you should also be able to see my phone screen. So this is This is the Creator Beta app that I have here. This is the home screen. So one thing you can see, it recognizes where we are, and it sees that there's a verified space that I just set up right beforehand. This is a verified space for the workshop. A verified space is just something that's sort of like registered to a location, and anybody with a viewer app can come download. They don't need to go through that whole process. They can get it on their own device. So you can also see there's a bunch of like random stuff in this area. So we have a map. You can see there's a ton of sort of random markers around here. We can probably not pay attention to those, but they're around, and you can create your own very easily as well within the app. If I select this verified space, there's only one sort of marker attached to this space. You can, in principle, have lots of like locations within a broader space. Like if you wanted to do like a treasure hunt, or if you have a really large building, you can sort of organize these by markers. And so this setting space here is set up to using an image marker. And that's actually this that we have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to scan this. Okay, and that worked. So there's no content in this space right now. What we're going to do is we're going to populate this space with some interesting content. So I'm going to back out. I'm going to go to the site and scan it as a creator. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add Content. You've got a handful of options, and like in the top left, the tools that we have. There are some models that are available. I will go ahead and share some of these content packs with you all, or with the devices that are here. I set up a couple for the workshop. So there's like a globe that I can place. There's like the SETI logo that kind of rotates a little bit. So I can place that somewhere. And when I'm happy with the content that I've set up in my space, I can just hit publish, and it's immediately available for everybody. I'm not going to publish it just because I'm using a different space.